In the last lecture, we saw how to create a class, how to create an object. So when you create an object, it's a two-step process. You basically created the object reference, and then you created the object, and then the object was allocated to the object reference. And whenever you want to access any of the data members or any of the methods, you always go by the object reference. In this lecture, let's try to understand a little bit more on this. So what really happens when you just create an object reference? So when you have employee emp1, what really happens is you have a memory that is allocated for emp1, which is just going to hold a reference for an object of type employee. It's not really going to contain the object itself. It can only refer or point. So here this one is nothing but the emp1. In the next line, if you see here, you have the new of employee. So what this does is, this is the one that exactly creates the entire object for the employee class. So only when you do new of employee, it basically allocates memory for name, ID, salary, all that stuff. So let me go back here. So when I say new of employee, it is going to create an employee object in a separate memory location, and this is going to have the ID, name, and the salary. And then this emp1 is going to point this to this memory location. So for example, if you had this in memory location 3000, and if you had the object in the memory location 6000, so now emp1 is going to hold the value 6000. So let me just provide a recap. So when you create an object reference, the memory is allocated for the object reference, but not really to the object. So when the memory for the object is allocated, when you really do new of the class name. And then when you have the object reference point to the object that you created, so this is what exactly happens. I hope it gives you a good idea what is object reference, what is object, and how it really works. So now when I say emp1.id, what it basically does, right? It goes to this object reference, and this object reference currently holds the memory location has the value 6000. It goes to the memory location 6000 and then gets the value of ID. So now say suppose I am going to create one more object reference, M2. So I'll have the new object reference here, which will be in some memory location, say 3010. And then this one is nothing but the M2. So right now, if you see here, the M2 does not point to anywhere. So it is just an object reference. So I can create a new object and then assign to M2. But let's see a different scenario. What will happen if I say M2 equal to M1? So basically what we are saying here is point to the same object what the object reference M1 is pointing to. So in this case, what will happen is the M2 also will point to the same object that the currently M1 is pointing to. So it will become like this. So now if you see here, both the object references point to the same object. And if you see here, initially we created the object reference for emp1, allocated the employee, memory for employee, and then the emp1 object reference points to it, and we have set the values. So now if I say, after we have like m2 point to the same object, if I say m2 dot print details, it's going to have the exact details like m1. Similarly, if I change the value, say suppose I change the salary, m2 dot salary equal to 7,000. So now if I say m1 dot print details and then m2 dot print details, both is going to print the salary as 7,000. The reason being, both the object references are pointing to the same object. If you modify an object through one of the references, it is actually going to modify the object itself. So that is the reason, even though you use one of the object references to modify the object, when you try to access the object through another object reference, it gave the same value. And so this is the important concept that we need to understand. What is object reference, and then this complex scenario of multiple object references pointing to the same object. I hope this video gives a good idea about what is object reference, what is object, and what happens when multiple object references point to the same object.